That this ISKCON movement has been started, established, and spread all over the world. So I just wanted to share with you, although tomorrow is the day that we glorify the spiritual master, but we might not be meeting tomorrow. Of course, you're all welcome to come to our celebration of the appearance day of our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, known as Vyas Puja, which will be celebrated tomorrow in the Juhu temple. So you're all welcome to come to that. There'll be glorification of Srila Prabhupada. There'll be the offering of flowers, which we call the Pushpanjali, and then an arti. And after that, there'll be prasadam for everyone. So you're all welcome to come. But just in case you can't make it, I thought I'd share with you some of the accomplishments that Srila Prabhupada completed as the founder of our movement. As you all know, at an advanced age, he left India. He was 70 years old, and crossed the ocean. And he had 2 heart attacks in the boat on the way to America. He didn't know anyone in America. He only had 40 rupees. Can you imagine going to America with only 40 rupiah? It's nothing. When he got off the boat, Srila Prabhupada didn't know whether to go right or left. No one greeted him. He was in New York City. Who's been to New York City here? Can you raise your hand? Anybody? Yeah, there's a few. The big city, right? You don't go walking alone at night in New York City, do you? Huh? Central Park? Oh, a dangerous place. Srila Prabhupada said, I was alone in New York. Very dangerous place. But I could survive because I was a Calcutta boy. So anyway, these are some of the things, the list of things that Srila Prabhupada accomplished, his accomplishments from 1965 to 1977, right? When Srila Prabhupada left this world. These are the things that he did. And the list is, it's quite exhaustive. Many things that Srila Prabhupada did. Even one of these things, we could spend a whole lifetime trying to accomplish. But Srila Prabhupada accomplished all of these things in just 11 short years. Right? So in 1965, at the age of 70, he left India to fulfill the order of his spiritual master. When he first met his spiritual master in 1922, he gave him instruction, you preach the message of Lord Chaitanya to the English-speaking people. That was the message he got. Right? So in order to fulfill that instruction of his Guru Maharaj, he left India and went to America. So after struggle, immediately things didn't happen for him. There were so many things that happened in the first year that Srila Prabhupada was in America. But in 1966, he opened up a small storefront in New York City and began giving lectures on the Bhagavad Gita. And many young people came to listen to his lectures. And these young people became a little serious about Krishna consciousness. The young people in those days, even though they came from wealthy families, upper middle class or rich families, even some of them, they had rejected their families, and they were living in a place called the Lower East Side of New York, and they were actually living like hippies. And one time in the airport, they asked Srila Prabhupada, what is your idea about the hippies? They asked Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada told the reporter, I think you know better than me. But there's something extraordinary, Prabhupada said. So these young men and young ladies, they came to listen to Srila Prabhupada's lectures on Bhagavad Gita, and they could actually change their lives. Right? and could give up all bad habits simply by hearing and chanting Hare Krishna. And then Srila Prabhupada, he sent these devotees out to chant in the streets, right? They went to a place in New York called Thompson Square Park, and they began to chant Hare Krishna. And it just so happened that the New York Times reporter was there, and he wrote a story about the devotees and about Srila Prabhupada chanting in the parks in New York City. And that's how it started. You know, New York was the first place, and from there, Srila Prabhupada went to San Francisco, and there he started another temple in a place called Haight-Ashbury, where all the young people were living. Then he started a center in Montreal. So by 1969, he sent some devotees to London. And the devotees went to London. Again, they didn't know anybody, just 3 householder couples. They went there to preach Krishna consciousness. But they met the Beatles, specifically George Harrison, whose video we saw earlier. He helped the devotees make an album called the Hare Krishna Mantra. And that record became #1 very quickly in England and sold so many records. So the Hare Krishna Mantra became famous in England. And you could see the devotees out on the streets in London chanting the Hare Krishna Mantra. Now, Srila Prabhupada, you know, he initiated, and you know, his initiations, one had to agree to follow some principles if you wanted to get initiated by Srila Prabhupada. It's not that, you know, you could do anything you wanted, but the initiates had to agree to follow 4 regulative principles. No meat, no fish, no eggs, no gambling, no intoxication. That meant, you know, no cigarettes, no chai, coffee, bidis, what to speak of ganja or anything else, right? The 4 regulative principles include no illicit sex life. That means sex only in marriage, right? So one had to agree to these 4 principles and had to agree to chant 16 rounds, right? The mala, 16 times a round. And then one could get initiated. So Srila Prabhupada initiated 5,000 persons from all over the world. He initiated devotees in London, Paris, Italy, Spain, of course America, where he started, in Canada, Japan, and he even brought the movement back to India, right? So with these devotees, he established centers, Hare Krishna centers. 108 temples he opened in just 11 years. He was opening so many temples. Between 1970 and 1971, just a year, they opened up 32 temples. They opened up 3 temples every month. Srila Prabhupada inaugurated the first Jagannath Rath Yatra outside of India, in San Francisco. And to this day, that was in 1967. To this day, every year they've held that Rath Yatra in San Francisco. And even the mayor of San Francisco declares the day of the Rath Yatra as Rath Yatra Day in San Francisco. And now that Rath Yatra is performed in all the major cities of the world. New York, it goes down 5th Avenue, right? Los Angeles, Chicago, and London, Paris, all the big cities in the world, so many different cities in India also that never were performing Rath Yatra before, also performing Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra. Srila Prabhupada established the Brahmachari ashram, right? And he He established the Grihastha ashram, Vanaprastha ashram, and even sannyas. Right? Srila Prabhupada had all the different ashrams working in ISKCON so that everyone could peacefully perform devotional service. It's called the Varna ashram system. People wrongly think that it's the caste system, that you become a Brahmin by birth, or you're a Shudra by birth. But Srila Prabhupada established that Krishna never says that in Bhagavad Gita. Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that by one's guna and one's karma, one's varna is established. You may be born in a Brahmin family, but if by your karma you're acting as a Shudra, then you're a Shudra. You may be born in a Shudra family, but if by your karma you're acting as a Brahmin, then you're a Brahmin. So Srila Prabhupada understood that the society required some real Brahmins. And before he went to America, he went to some business persons, good families. He said, "My dear sir, give me your son and I'll train him to become a Brahmana." And they replied, "Hare Swamiji, what is the use of becoming Brahmin? We want our son to become engineer." So nobody was giving. So Srila Prabhupada said, I had to go to America to make some Brahmanas. He taught them how to rise early, 3:30 in the morning, take your bath, go to Mangalarti, chant japa, worship the deity, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, right? All of those things the devotees were doing about the time everybody else was just getting up. So he trained the people, Srila Prabhupada trained people in cleanliness, deity worship, Shastra, how to be Brahmins. It's a very significant thing that Srila Prabhupada created. He instructed his disciples in 1967 to start an incense business, to provide financial support for the temples. And the name of that business was called Spiritual Sky Incense. Right? And within 4 years, the business, Spiritual Sky Incense, generated an annual revenue of $1 million every year. And today that's, a lot more in 2015. So Srila Prabhupada had the principle that everything could be used in the service of Krishna, even business, right? The Spiritual Sky Incense business was one of the first businesses back in the 60s to have a computer. And they programmed the computer to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Srila Prabhupada was very innovative. And Srila Prabhupada started the Sunday Love Feast. Right? So many people were coming to his place in 1966 at 26 2nd Avenue, and Srila Prabhupada would cook a big feast. I remember the first time I went to the temple, right, and I took the feast. They had white rice, and they had masala rice, and they had a nice sabji, and puris. I never saw a puri before. And the really thing that got me was the sweet rice and the gulab-jamun. I never saw a gulab-jamun before. Right? When I asked them what this was, the devotees told me it's prasadam. Right? So every Sunday I had to go to the temple, otherwise where was I going to get prasadam? And after I moved into the temple, which is another story, but I moved in the temple, I could never leave the temple because the Sunday feast was coming and I wanted to get the prasadam. So I was captured by Srila Prabhupada and his prasadam. He used to call the gulab-jamun the ISKCON bullets, because they would give those to the guests, and they're filled with nice sugary syrup, gulab jamun, and he would capture them with the Krishna Prasadam. And Srila Prabhupada started the first chain of vegetarian restaurants in America. He called it Govindas, right? So people were coming and they were paying money to eat rice, dal, sabji, and chapatis. There was no such thing in America before Srila Prabhupada. No one saw sabji, no one saw chapatis. People eat with knives and forks. To take a chapati and break it and eat some sabji, they never saw that before. Right? But Srila Prabhupada, when he left India, some of his godbrothers said, if you go to America, you have to learn how to eat with a knife and a fork. Right? But when Srila Prabhupada went to America, he never ate with a knife and a fork, and he taught the Americans how to eat with their hands. That is Acharya, a powerful person. He didn't wear pants and shirt, he wore dhoti. He taught the Americans how to wear dhotis. How do we know how to wear a dhoti? Srila Prabhupada taught us. This is how you put on a dhoti. Probably some Indian gentlemen here don't know how to even put on a dhoti. Well, we can teach you if you want to learn later on. Srila Prabhupada every day in that 11 years would give lecture morning and evening. Morning on Srimad Bhagavatam, evening on Bhagavad Gita. And there's 2,500 recorded lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave while he was preaching all over the world. And besides the formal lectures, Srila Prabhupada would have interviews with priests and nuns and scholars and PhDs and police officers. Once he met the chief of the police in Chicago, right? And Srila Prabhupada was telling him how you can solve the crime problem. Right? So there's thousands of conversations that Srila Prabhupada had with all these dignitaries from around the world, explaining to them the science of Krishna consciousness. Even with scientists, Srila Prabhupada would explain what is the real science according to Krishna and Krishna consciousness. Some of the people that Srila Prabhupada had interviews with was Allen Ginsberg. Maybe you didn't hear him. He's a famous poet in New York City. Ravi Shankar, Alice Coltrane, John Lennon, and George Harrison, and many other prominent persons in society Srila Prabhupada would have regular conversations with. Srila Prabhupada recorded more than 20 albums of devotional music. And he published a magazine called Back to Godhead. And in the height of its circulation, they were selling every month about 1 million copies of Back to Godhead magazine. And Srila Prabhupada started here in India the ISKCON Life Membership Program, right? And since he started it to this day, there's tens of thousands of ISKCON Life members all around India and all around the world. Srila Prabhupada established the Gurukuls, primary schools for education, in Vrindavan and in Mayapur. He also built this Juhu temple that we see, the marble temple. He built a temple in Vrindavan called the Krishna Balaram Mandir. And he had a plan for a big city in the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, Mayapur, just north of Calcutta, about 3 hours is a place called Mayapur. It's right along the Ganga. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared there. And Srila Prabhupada had a plan, a vision, that a great city would come up, and that's gradually manifesting now. The biggest temple in the world is being constructed right now. It's called the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. And it's going on in construction. It's 350 feet high. It's almost as high as St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Very huge temple for all the people to come and understand the philosophy and the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada started, besides ISKCON, he started the Bhaktivedanta Swami Charity Trust to rediscover all the holy places connected with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada established farm communities. Srila Prabhupada wanted that people live on the farm and grow everything that they require on the farm. Actually, what we really need in life comes from the earth. There's nothing in the factory they can create that you can eat. Can you eat nuts and bolts? No. Right? What we eat comes from the ground. What we wear comes from the ground. Cotton, where does it come from? Comes from the factory? No, it comes from the ground. So what you need, all the necessities of life, you can get off the land. Srila Prabhupada wanted the devotees to live off the land and live in self-sufficient farm communities. So they didn't have to depend on materialistic society for the necessities of life. You know, this whole world that we live in is based on oil, right? The whole show that's going on in Bombay with all the cars and the air conditioning and the lights and the electric, it's all because there's oil. And the oil is running out. So the oil civilization is not going to last for long. Right? Then what are people going to do? The people will survive who know how to grow food. So Srila Prabhupada wanted to establish self-sufficient farm communities where people could have a little land, grow what they need, live simply, and balance time they could spend hearing about the pastimes of the Lord and chanting Hare Krishna and taking care of cows. Right? He started cow protection in America. Unheard of. Everybody ate cows. They didn't protect cows. But Srila Prabhupada made farms where they protected cows. Right? He made goshalas. This was completely unheard of in the West. And now they're spreading. There's hundreds of farm communities, not only in America, but in Europe and here in India. Also, our Juhu temple has a farm in Talasari. We have 50 acres and about 150 cows. So if you want to have a nice weekend, we invite you all to come to our Talasari farm. You can eat organic sabji. You can drink pure cow's milk without any detergent or tuna inside. And you can pet the cows. Did you know that just by petting a cow, you'll never get high blood pressure? You just have to brush the cow. You'll never get high. Anybody got high blood pressure? Come out to Talasari Farm and pet the cows. Your blood pressure will go down. Right? Pure water, pure air. We invite anyone who would like to see our farm community to please come. But Srila Prabhupada established these farm communities all over the world. Srila Prabhupada showed us how to make dioramas. Right? He called it the theistic exhibition, the fate exhibition. Right? And there, various dioramas were displayed, and people would come from all over. In Los Angeles, there's a diorama exhibit. In Detroit, there's a diorama exhibit. And by these diorama exhibits, Srila Prabhupada preached the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. And he showed the devotees how to make the dolls in the exhibits. Of course, Srila Prabhupada guided this movement. We were all very young. When I joined the movement, I was only 22 years old, right? And Srila Prabhupada guided, he was the oldest person in the movement, the only person that was older in the movement. Everybody else was just a kid. But he guided all the devotees, counseling them in spiritual life and managerial matters. And he established this ISKCON movement all over the world by training his disciples, these young persons, how to do things, right? And they made a lot of mistakes, but Srila Prabhupada never got discouraged. He continued to instruct them how to spread Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada had photographers, devotees that were expert at photography, and they traveled with him. And so we have in the archives about 30,000 different photographs of Srila Prabhupada as he was traveling all over the world and preaching. And one of Srila Prabhupada's most powerful contributions to society is his books. Srila Prabhupada translated from Sanskrit and Bengali over 70 volumes of books. Srimad Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and so many other books. And by the sale of these literatures, so many people came to Krishna consciousness. I became a devotee because I got a book. I read about it and I became interested. So Srila Prabhupada would take rest at 9 o'clock at night, and he would get up at 12 o'clock. And while everybody else was sleeping, he would translate Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And these books are used as standard classroom textbooks in many universities around the world. And Srila Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita are in libraries, college libraries, all over Europe, the United States, Canada, and here in India also. And he did all this at the advanced age of 70, right? Started this movement when he was 70 years old. And Srila Prabhupada founded the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, which is a publishing house for printing his books. And by 1976, already 55 million pieces of literature had been distributed. And by now, there's many, many more millions of literatures that have been distributed. And Srila Prabhupada's books are published in over 60 different languages around the world. All the languages in India, Srila Prabhupada's books are published. But not only that, even in Chinese. The Chinese government agreed to print the Srimad Bhagavatam, and they're atheists, but still they printed Srimad Bhagavatam in the Chinese language, and they sell it there in China. So once Srila Prabhupada was translating the books, and the devotees would get them published, but his translation of the Chaitanya Charitamrita wasn't 17 volumes, but they only had published one volume. So the person that was in charge of the BBT, Srila Prabhupada asked him how long it would take. And he said, well, probably it would take about 3 years to publish the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita, 17 volumes. But Srila Prabhupada said, no, that's not fast enough. You have to do it much quicker. So they said, okay, Srila Prabhupada, they calculated. They said, then we'll do one volume in every 2 months. And then Srila Prabhupada said, no, you have to do all 17 volumes in 2 months. And the manager of the BBT, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, he said, but that's impossible. And Srila Prabhupada looked at him and said, impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. You published the 17 volumes in 2 months. So devotees were wondering how they would do it, but they worked night, day. They made paintings, they made the covers, they did the Bengali transcription, they laid it out, they typeset it, got it to the printer, and in just 2 months' time, the devotees published 17 volumes of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And they were empowered. They felt after they did it, they never imagined that they could do such a thing, but they felt because of Srila Prabhupada's empowerment that they could do anything. They could do the impossible. So Srila Prabhupada traveled continuously. Even though he was older, he went around the world 14 times to the various centers that he had established to enliven the devotees and to preach to the devotees Krishna consciousness. And he managed all of this without the internet. There was no internet at that time. But Srila Prabhupada used to write letters, right? In the morning he would take a little breakfast and then he would hear his correspondence and he would reply letters. Srila Prabhupada wrote thousands of letters inspiring his devotees and managing the affairs of ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada never even used a telephone. He never picked up the telephone to call anybody. He managed the whole movement through writing letters. So these are some of the extraordinary achievements that Srila Prabhupada completed in just 11 years. And so you can understand that we're highly indebted to the activities that Srila Prabhupada performed because they made us come to spiritual life. They helped us understand what's the purpose of life. Life is not simply meant for sense gratification. Sense gratification is available even for hogs and dogs. They also have sense gratification. But human life, there's something special about human life. We have extra intelligence. And that extra intelligence is meant to understand God and our relationship with God. So we're deeply indebted to Srila Prabhupada for all that he has given us and actually made us human beings. And so we invite all of you, if you're philosophically inclined, then you can apply your philosophical attitude to Srila Prabhupada's books. And there's a book that was published by the devotees after Srila Prabhupada left called the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. And all of the activities that Srila Prabhupada performed over those 11 years establishing Krishna consciousness all over the world are very nicely described in the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. There's an abridged edition and there's the complete, it's in 7 volumes. And many persons, they became completely attached to Krishna consciousness simply by reading this biography of Srila Prabhupada, the Prabhupada Lilamrita. So I thank you very much for listening patiently, and we invite you all tomorrow, if you would like to come, to Srila Prabhupada's Vyas Puja, which starts tomorrow morning around 11 o'clock. In 12 o'clock or 12:30 or so, there's Pushpanjali and Arti, and then after that, there's Prashadam. And this evening also, we'll conclude our Janmashtami program, and Nitai Madhav Prabhu will give us an update on what's yet to come. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.